All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Engineering Major, Philosophy Minor. I hope you guys enjoyed the two movie reviews that I did tonight. Run, Hide, Fight definitely gets a 9 out of 10 in my book. Wonder Woman 1984, not so much. 4, maybe 5 out of 10 maximum. Possibly even a 3. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and now I'm going to go on and read another excerpt from the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Now, these parts that I'm going to read right here, I'm about 3/4 of the way through the book, maybe a little bit further than that, but um, so far, these specific sections that I'm going to read have been some of the most striking to me because they really seem to get at the kind of underlying philosophy and message of the book. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start reading, and hope you guys find these sections as powerful as I did. Apropos of the orthodox communists, Stalin was necessary. For such a purge as that, yes, but a party like that was necessary too. The majority of those in power, up to the very moment of their own arrest, were pitiless in arresting others, obediently destroyed their peers in accordance with those same instructions, and handed over to retribution any friend or comrade in arms of yesterday. And all the big Bolsheviks, who now wear martyrs' halos, managed to be the executioners of other Bolsheviks, not even taking into account how all of them, in the first place, had been the executioners of non-communists. Perhaps 1937 was needed in order to show how little their whole ideology was worth. That ideology of which they boasted so enthusiastically, turning Russia upside down, destroying its foundations, trampling everything it held sacred underfoot. That Russia, where they themselves had never been threatened by such retribution. The victims of the Bolsheviks from 1918 to 1946 never conducted themselves so despicably as the leading Bolsheviks when the lightning struck them. If you study in detail the whole history of the arrests and trials of 1936 to 1938, the principal revulsion you feel is not against Stalin and his accomplices, but against the humiliatingly repulsive defendants, nausea at their spiritual baseness after their former pride and implacability. Now I'm going to skip decently far ahead in the book, but this next section I think ties back. I smiled in pride that I had been arrested not for stealing nor treason nor desertion, but because I had discovered through my power of reasoning the evil secrets of Stalin. I smiled at the thought that I wanted and might still be able to effect some small remedies and changes in our Russian way of life. But all that time my suitcase was being carried by others, and I didn't even feel remorseful about it. And if my neighbor, whose sunken cheeks were already covered with a soft 2-week growth of beard, and whose eyes were filled to overflowing with suffering and knowledge, had then and there reproached me in the clearest of clear Russian words for having disgraced the honor of a prisoner by appealing to the convoy for help, and had accused me of haughtiness, of setting myself above the rest of them, I would not have understood him. I simply would not have understood what he was talking about. I was an officer. And if 7 of us had to die on the way, and the 8th could have been saved by the convoy, what was to keep me from crying out, "Sergeant, save me, I am an officer"? And that's what an officer is even when his shoulder boards aren't blue. And if they are blue? If he has been indoctrinated to believe that even among other officers he is the salt of the earth, and that he knows more than others and is entrusted with more responsibility than others, and that consequently it is his duty to force a prisoner's head between his legs and then to shove him like that into a pipe, why shouldn't he? I credited myself with unselfish dedication, but meanwhile I had been thoroughly prepared to be an executioner. And if I had gotten into an NKVD school under Yezhov, maybe I would have matured just in time for Beria. So let the reader who expects this book to be a political expose slam its cover shut right now. If only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? And then skipping a little bit ahead. It would be beautiful to think so, but when one learns, for example, the nature of Yagoda's striving toward the sacred, an eyewitness from the group around Gorky, who was close to Yagoda at the time, reports that in the vestibule of the bathhouse on Yagoda's estate near Moscow, icons were placed so that Yagoda and his comrades, after undressing, could use them as targets for revolver practice before going in to take their baths. Icons, by the way, spelled IKONS, are like images of Christ or like religious images. So they would shoot at these religious images before going into a bath. And the book talks about how religious persecution was a big part of the Gulag. Anyway, continuing. Just how are we to understand that? As the act of an evildoer? What sort of behavior is it? Do such people really exist? We would prefer to say that such people cannot exist, that there aren't any. It is permissible to portray evildoers in a story for children so as to keep the picture simple. But when the great world literature of the past, Shakespeare, Schiller, Dickens, inflates and inflates images of evildoers of the blackest shades, it seems somewhat farcical and clumsy to our contemporary perception. The trouble lies in the way these classic evildoers are pictured. They recognize themselves as evildoers, and they know their souls are black. And they reason, quote, I cannot live unless I do evil, so I'll set my father against my brother. I'll drink the victim's sufferings until I'm drunk with them, end quote. Iago, from Othello, Shakespeare's Othello, Iago very precisely identifies his purposes and his motives as being black and born of hate. But no, that's not the way it is. To do evil, a human being must first of all believe that what he's doing is good, or else that it's a well-considered act in conformity with natural law. Fortunately, it is in the nature of the human being to seek a justification for his answers. Macbeth, again a Shakespearean story, Macbeth's self-justifications were feeble, and his conscience devoured him. Yes, even Iago was a little lamb too. The imagination and the spiritual strength of Shakespeare's evildoers stopped short of a dozen corpses because they had no ideology. Ideology. That is what gives evildoing its long-sought justification, and gives the evildoer the necessary steadfastness and determination. That is the social theory which helps to make his acts seem good instead of bad in his own and others' eyes, so that he won't hear reproaches and curses, but will receive praise and honors. That was how the agents of the Inquisition fortified their wills, by invoking Christianity. The conquerors of foreign lands, by extolling the grandeur of their motherland. The colonizers by civilization, the Nazis by race, and the Jacobins, early and late, by equality, brotherhood, and the happiness of future generations. Thanks to ideology, the 20th century was fated to experience evildoing on a scale calculated in the millions. This cannot be denied, nor passed over, nor suppressed. How then do we dare insist that evildoers do not exist? And who was it that destroyed these millions? Without evildoers, there would have been no archipelago. That is the precise line the Shakespearean evildoer could not cross. There was a rumor going the rounds between 1918 and 1920 that the Petrograd Cheka, headed by Uritsky, and the Odessa Cheka, headed by Daesh, did not shoot all those condemned to death, but fed some of them alive to the animals in the city zoos. I do not know whether this is true or calumny, or, if there were any such cases, how many there were. But I wouldn't set out to look for proof either. Following the practice of the Blue Caps, I would propose that they prove to us that this was impossible. How else could they get food for the zoos in those famine years? Take it away from the working class? Those enemies were going to die anyway, so why couldn't their deaths support the zoo economy of the Republic and thereby assist our march into the future? Wasn't it expedient? That is the precise line the Shakespearean evildoer could not cross. But the evildoer with ideology does cross it, and his eyes remain dry and clear. Physics is aware of phenomena which occur only at threshold magnitudes, which do not exist at all until a certain threshold encoded by and known to nature has been crossed. No matter how intense a yellow light you shine on a lithium sample, it will not emit electrons. But as soon as a weak bluish light begins to glow, it does emit them. You can cool oxygen to 100 degrees below 0 centigrade and exert as much pressure as you want. It does not yield, but remains a gas. But as soon as minus 183 degrees is reached, it liquefies and begins to flow. Evidently, evil doing also has a threshold magnitude. Yes, a human being hesitates and bobs back and forth between good and evil all his life. He slips, falls back, clambers up, repents, things begin to darken again. But just so long as the threshold of evildoing is not crossed, the possibility of returning remains, and he himself is still within the reach of our hope. But when through the density of evil actions, the result either of their own extreme degree or of the absoluteness of his power, he suddenly crosses that threshold, he has left humanity behind, and without, perhaps, the possibility of return. All right, guys, so that's all I'm going to read for this one. And yeah, think about that. The ideology of believing that what you're doing, maybe it's just a minor job. Maybe it's just carrying a suitcase. But believing that what you're doing is actually good, even though acts of extreme evil are happening in the background. And yet you are being rewarded every step of the way, despite that. Really powerful stuff. So pages will come up here in a second. Hope you guys enjoyed the videos, and yeah, I was really moved by this section, so I hope you guys were too. Comment below if you agree. All right, have a good one, guys.